So, welcome, man. I appreciate the time.
No worries, no worries.
This is a cool moment. So, the idea behind the podcast is I'm trying to figure out what people's inner lives are like, right? And it usually starts with the idea of imagination and whatnot. But do you want to share a bit about yourself, or how do you? Let me say it this way. In your work currently, do you use imagination often?
All the time.
Okay.
Even outside of work, I've always used imagination.
Right.
Growing up, it was always perceived as just daydreaming or being lazy, but in actual fact, I've always imagined other worlds, other realities. When I was younger, I couldn't really make sense of it though. I mean, like, oh yeah, cool spaceships and aliens and all of these different beings. No, I was saying when I was younger, I couldn't define it, right? Because I was just purely daydreaming. But as I've come to grow, and I realize there's a lot of internal thoughts that need to be processed, and instead of writing them down,
Okay.
or verbalizing them, I have that internal conversation constantly, all the time.
Okay. So what? So see, you are like you're into animation and design. So I totally understand imagination is required, but some people, like for example, for me, when I was younger, my imagination was through language, words. That was easy to visualize. Visualizing like films and movements and stuff like that wasn't there, and then it changed at some point. Now I can see like film previews in my mind and something like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So is yours like that too? Is it visual for you? Like
Purely
are you
visual.
seeing purely visual?
Purely visual.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to balance it out though, as you say, dive more into scripts writing, because that's also important in the film creation process, right? But even if I'm relating it to my work, my interpersonal connections, the way I walk this earth, how I'm perceived by others, I've really had to go internal to try and be as true to myself as possible. I think that's the best thing I can do. I lived in, just a bit of context, so I lived in China for a few years. I'm a 6'3" black guy, just for a bit more context right there. So I stood out like a sore thumb. So I stand out in this country. I can't speak the language. So naturally what's going to happen? I go internal, right? I'm going internal in a position in my life where there's a lot of attention on me constantly, right? Because I'm out and about. So for me, I had to find a definition of what it meant to be happy for myself.
Wow. So how did you see that culture then, where that was happening? Did you feel like it's you had to change? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I had to go tunnel vision. Because if I didn't and I focused, I mean, we're sitting in the park now, but if this was a busy Saturday afternoon in Beijing, I would have people come up to me, ask some photos, and again, I don't have a problem with that. But
no way.
Yeah, like
that level?
Yeah, constantly. Like people come up to me for photos, try and speak a bit of English, try and speak Chinese to me, and right. It's like when that happens, it didn't happen on a daily basis, but it happened frequently. It happened enough for me to
realize it's a cultural thing.
To realize it's just a cultural thing, because a lot of people couldn't deal with that, and I fully understand why they couldn't. The reason why I could was because I'm very comfortable in my skin. I'm very comfortable in who I am as a person. The only time someone can sort of physically hurt me is if it's physical, right? I think in terms of verbal insults or the way people feel about me, it can stick, but it doesn't damage the integrity of who I am.
Right. So let me ask you this. When you see people, let's say you see those people in China, for example, do you have a sense that they're seeing the real you, or do you have a sense that they're just in some game of their mind and I'm just I'm in front of them, like just because, you know what I'm saying?
You got to.
Like I'm trying to say, like, do you see it as if it's their culture that's making them behave that way, or are they actually themselves behaving that way?
I
Maybe
realized
it's both, actually. I don't know.
I realized it was the culture. The first 3 days I was in Beijing. I get to the hotel. There's a bunch of us. I was going to teach English, right? So in the training process, go to a hotel, and this kid comes up to me and he's like, oh, NBA. It was that moment I knew. that one interaction I already knew. the only black people he's
Yeah.
ever seen in his life play basketball. So he sees me and he's made that association, right? So what I'm saying is, that's just one example. Like, that happened. There's many different perceptions of the way people see you. Now, that's just China. Obviously, you stand out. But what happens if you come to, Toronto, for example, or come to a Western world where you don't necessarily stand out, and then people are trying to fight for their identity, right? There's this constant fight for trying to identify who you are. Now, for someone who's been internal this time, I'm like, okay, now what I put out really needs to matter, and spending time trying to refine, spending time trying to refine that. What was the original question again? Sorry.
See, I was asking about, do you think it's something cultural, or do you think it's something from them, right?
Both.
It's both. Yeah.
It's
But no,
both.
I got the sense. Now, in meeting, okay, let me take it back to imagination.
Yeah.
Right. Were you a creative person from the beginning, since you were young?
From as early as I can remember.
You were creating things. And
Started with drawing.
Okay.
I got into flip books when I was 7. So even video, I mean, I'm an animator now. I'd consider myself an animator. But even
flip book, like 3D kind of.
I didn't have blank books though. So what I was doing, I was taking all the books in our house and using the corners, right? So the little stick men. If back then all those books are thrown away. But if you went, I was running out of books after a while. We had around like 60.
Oh, you mean the thing you were
right
doing?
corners where the page numbers were.
Yeah,
the page numbers were, there were little stick men doing backflips, blasters.
Yeah.
Obviously my parents weren't happy about that, but that was my output, because I'm like, yeah, I can draw, but I want to make those stick men move. So I started doing flip books, got my first computer camera, started doing stop motion. Then did video editing. I've been editing for like 15 years now, just purely. The environment I grew up in, it didn't allow for me to have a loyal group of friends around me. So from an early age, I didn't really understand what that meant in terms of having that network. I couldn't really go out and play. It just wasn't the right environment for that. So it meant I was inside a lot. I was actually running home from school just so I can play Minecraft and edit at the age of 16, right? Up until 20, where that then turned into just purely editing, and then directing, and then the team management, and then I realized like a lot of these traits and that
so that's incredible. So one interest led to the discovery of other interests.
It's always been there. I realize, like, I'm only realizing now, where I'm having to lead these teams, and I'm shocking myself. I'm like, wow, like, why is this so natural to me? And I'm like, it's because I have been doing that. I've been doing it just on a different scale. When I was going home and playing Minecraft, I had it's got hacked now, but I had a Minecraft channel, had 10,000 subscribers.
Oh.
Obviously, Minecraft's a world where you can host online worlds, and at one point I'm orchestrating all like 30-40 of my subscribers to do a shoot so I can film it. Even just that, I'm like, wait, I've been doing that from the age of like 15, 16. So it's like now, as I'm grown, I'm like, okay, like I'm very familiar in that. But going back to imagination, imagination is essential to me. I don't see anything else, honestly. Everything I do, I try and do something different, because I believe imagination is also tied to saturation, right?
Can you explain that?
Everyone has imagination,
Right.
Meaning that everyone has output, meaning that there's now tons of output, and now there's saturation in that output. Right? So it's like, now as a creative person has this imagination, I'm fighting for your attention. But now the question is, okay, let me take a step back, become more imaginative. So now my output has more power than everybody else's output. Not in a competitive way,
Right.
but in a way that allows you to be imaginative and have that creation create for itself when you're not creating. So I'm not talking one piece video piece of videos are great. Videos are great, but with Instagram has killed, and TikTok have killed that. I'm not saying killed the artistry, but
No, I know what you're saying. You're pretty much saying there's so much of it now that it's kind of lost its glow.
There's millions of it every day.
And even AIs come now, and it's gonna, like, do stuff like all these artists have been trying to do for years, right? Something like that.
So it's like the idea is
maybe not that level, but
there's beauty in the creation. Don't get me wrong. I would still happily sit down and do a flip book again.
There's beauty in creation.
Right, there's beauty in creation, but the question is, if you're wanting to get attention and monetize it, you may have to play the game, right, in order to cater to certain audiences, so you can get more engagement and more views. Or the flip side is you go back, even further back, find out who you are as a true deep creator and put out something no one's ever seen before.
Exactly.
But then what happens is, that's great. You put it out, and it gets copied, saturated, and then all of a sudden you can't put out the same content, because you can put out the same content because you can grow an audience, but are you talking about creating something someone's never seen before? Like, that's what I try and do. And almost, I'd consider myself a perfectionist, and in that sense I've shot myself in the foot, in a sense, because I'm not putting anything out, because I'm like, no, it has to be this way.
Oh yeah, the expectation on what
that
you want to get out. Yeah.
But it's for myself. I'm like, okay, take 3D for example. 3D is the reason why I've jumped so much into 3D, is because you can create anything. So as someone who wants to imagine and create, there's no boundaries. There's no boundaries. Right. So when there's no boundaries, there's no limits on what you can create. But now the question is that even with 3D, the question is, the technology is evolving so fast, where you can learn a process that takes, let's say, 6 months, and then it becomes obsolete the month after, on the 7th month. Right. Take AI for example. I can put down all these 3D buildings in this 3D space, add in lighting, materials, put a camera there and render it. Cool. That'll take me what? A few days to a week. AI is now allowing for that process to be removed. So you're not spending time adding materials or adding buildings, or
it's doing it for you.
It's doing it for you. The question is, you can go straight to the creation, purely straight to the creation. When it's eventually tapped into our subconscious and it's created from our subconscious, where our physical, the chemicals can be altered and monitored, now it's giving you what you want without even knowing it.
So would you say that AI has done something that the most uncreative people can be creative now? That means there is no natural creativity anymore, when somebody could just be like, do this for me, and it's like,
it's always there. It's about how you connect it, though. The way I see it, we have every resource in our fingertips. AI can look at what's already there because we can feed it to it. How easy it's to look. It's so easy to see what's not there when you have it placed in front of you, right? But whereas for us, we have so much, we can't dissect it. Whereas AI a machine can go, okay, these are all the assets. How can we make it better? How can we improve? Whereas we're currently like, wait, there's a lot. Whereas AI has it already. It can make decisions. Whereas we have to analyze those decisions, find out what's better for us, find out what's better for the audience, like take time in that.
Okay, have you seen this? Like, you've heard this thing, AI is going to take jobs, right? In a lot of these lectures I give, I say that one of the biggest dangers is dehumanization. Human beings are not, they're becoming less human as the days are going by, right? And technology is a huge factor, entertainment is a huge factor. Now you tell me this, how can we be creative individuals if our creativity in the system, like, do you understand, do you think we're being part of the problem by being creatives in a modern world using technology?
100%.
So what
because
is the solution?
Even from what I just said, someone would say, okay, yeah, but what's the solution?
Right.
You find the solution for yourself. Because realistically, do you know how I said to you earlier, the reason why I want to go and build a farm and have because I got into carpentry a year and a half ago, not because I needed a creative output that wasn't in front of a screen at its pure form. I want to get into pottery, craftsmanship, right? Because that's what connects me, and that's my happy medium, where I can say, hey, I'm still in this world that's advancing pretty quickly, but I can always take a step back. But in order to take a step back, I need to do well and play the game, right? So again, once you know you're in the game, play it and try and escape it. I definitely want to escape that.
Right.
Now, someone could argue, okay, is it a true escape? You're still in the system, you're still paying taxes, you're still doing that. Of course, but like I said, happy medium, right?
Let me tell you something. I differ here with a lot of people who go towards nature. Let me tell you why. Because I had this view for billions of years we were in nature, right? For a long time.
A long time.
Right? Even all the spiritual people who say, come to the here and now, we've been in the here and now before we were conscious of time, right? Everything was here and now.
What's changed is the environment changed.
So I have this view that even though it's unnatural, because it's new, we have to go through it.
We have to.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's like it's the new thing, right?
As I said earlier, the reason why I'm so here for it is because we've adapted before, right? We've adapted before this. We have lived, especially, I was born in 95. I saw Blackberries come and go, iPhones, in the inception of the internet, Web3, AI, all of this. And it's like, what I said, as I said previously as well, if you were to click your fingers and go 20 years in the future, you'd see all the changes. But to live those 20 years, you'd feel it, but you wouldn't feel it as significantly if you were to make that jump. It's like every day things are changing and improving, and we adapt to it. That's what we do. That's what we've been doing. Right? So there's a lot of these discussions of this and synthetic robots. I believe it's going to happen anyway. Yeah. Whether we fight it, I'm sitting back, guys, listen. One thing,
you're gonna hug an android at some point.
What's inevitable in this life?
Shake hands with an android. What's up?
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Maybe late our lifetimes, but I don't know. I just know this thing is gonna happen, because one thing that's inevitable in our lifetimes is technology and time. Those two things will play out. They have been playing out. Cars have got faster. Cameras are getting smaller, better quality.
So,
and more technologies.
Right. Okay. Now, is it okay I ask some deep questions here?
Yeah,
sure.
Sure.
So, for example, if somebody went to Aristotle and asked Aristotle, "Yo, what's imagination?" he would say it's something the soul is using, or that which you are is using.
Like a vessel.
Right. But some people, you ask them, right, their imagination is like their spiritual experience, their reality. They take the content of their mind literal, right? But in some schools of thought, you would watch your mind. For example, if you thought there was an alien here, you wouldn't be like, yo, there's an alien here. You'd just be like, okay, my mind is showing me something now. Now it's going to go on and pass, or something like that, right? So I guess where I'm going with this is, with your experience of imagination, like, and consciousness, like, do you entertain an idea? Like, how many dimensions do you see? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, what kind of being? How do you see your being? Is it just purely physical? If it's purely physical, imagination is hallucinatory. Imagination is elemental reasoning, right? Because how would you explain it then?
I would say, isn't just in the dimension that we know it, although I am very conscious of that, meaning that there's a part of empathy as well, right? Even if I was right, look, see, like, how do you
treat the world? I'm asking. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying, like, I'm not asking for something spiritual. I'm just saying, when you see this as a being in a world, like, what is this?
Every single. This is why I love the movie Butterfly Effect, and I know there's a few other movies that play around the same concept. I think about it every time, because think about it. Even look at this table. We're currently sitting on the table right now that says, "Sit and rest, weary traveler. Life is long. Take your time." Right?
Yeah.
I just read that out. Someone listening to this is now going to take that in, altering their thoughts. Can you see how
it's interconnected? Even the smallest acts are connected.
The smallest acts are interconnected. Yeah. How does that ripple through to other people? So when I walk and I interact with people, I always keep that in mind. When I leave this person, am I making them better off in a sense, or not helping them, but I'd want to at least
let me share something.
I don't know.
I had this thing where I when I was younger, I thought when I saw someone and I thought that guy was a bad person, that guy was bad. When I saw someone who was good, and then I realized these are my impressions. I actually don't know who these beings are. This might sound bizarre, but even my family, my siblings, my brother, my parents, right? I've known them my whole life. But there's moments where I'm like, I have no idea who these beings are that are here. Do you know what I mean? That means I have no idea how they are experiencing themselves to themselves. Yeah. Now, what I'm trying to ask you is your conscious experience in this life just this object? Is it your inner realms? Let's say you say you're an imagined person, so you see that. Is it just these two, as if you're like just this watcher of your mind and body in a moment? Are you seeing it that way, or is there something deeper, or how do you see it? You know what I'm saying?
I believe before I entered the body I'm in now, and after I leave it, I believe the energy there won't just dissipate. It will go.
Energy will remain.
Energy.
Oh, right.
I don't. I did. You know the term starseed?
I've heard of it.
I believe I'm a starseed. I truly do. Like growing up, I never felt like I was supposed to, I've always felt out.
Yeah.
Even now, at this, I'm trying to navigate in this world and find my way that works, right?
Yeah.
But the energy that's associated with that, I've been through some shit, bro. I've been through some next level shit, and it's mental that has been able to keep me going through all of that. But that mental isn't just me.
It's naturally there. Yeah, there's something there. Yeah.
Even half of the stuff I've told you before, like even with the problem I had with moving in, that happened in China 4 years before that, right? So it's like I've experienced all of these things, but yet the mental is like, okay, no, like you got this. What is this? What is this life?
You know, there was this girl I remember she was sharing about her relationship with her parents, and she had her mother was a bit evil, right? And she had this messed up childhood, but it was so weird to me because she wanted to be the perfect mother. Do you understand what I'm saying? Even though that bad stuff happened to her, she wanted to be the good thing. Do you see what I'm saying? Even the bad thing that happens, a part of you still like, I don't know, like she went, like imagine she had the worst mother and that inspired her to be a good mother, right? So that chaos made her ready for the order.
I believe it's
like something like that.
We experience it. We have the human experience, right? But it's almost predestined for us to feel these emotions, go for these trials and tribulations to mold you into who you need to be. Half of the skill sets that are required of me now, like I said, it feels natural to me. But if you to say this is what I'm doing, if you know, if you went to the version of me 10 years ago and said that, he'd be like, no, like 16 years, I didn't even know how to talk to people, right?
Yeah.
Didn't even know how to conversate with people. One thing I would say that's helped a lot on my journey is traveling, seeing the world, connecting with different people from different walks of life, different classes, different backgrounds. Like, it really helps get a perspective. Now, this perspective isn't something that you snap and wake up in the morning and go, whoa, like I've learned so much, but it molds you indirectly over time when you start meeting all these people. But more than anything, yeah, I'd say all energies the way I see it.
Right. You know, I in one of these talks I was giving, I was saying, they had this concept of the transmigratory soul in Buddhism. This soul that doesn't die, goes from one life to one life. And then in science, we have the idea of energy cannot be created or destroyed, but changes from form to form. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like I feel that thing you're saying about that thing that's gonna be there even after. I actually feel that. I just feel we're storifying that.
But this is
you know
the
what
thing.
I'm saying? Like that's the.
This is the thing. That energy dissipating. I feel like there's almost this idea that even once the energy dissipates, it's still connected to this earth, and it just wraps around this earth like it's energy. Why is it staying with us? Once that goes, it's interdimensional. We can't even comprehend that, right?
That's a good point. That means we may never comprehend energy.
Think about it. Like for how many universes and black holes and stars are out there, why is the energy that's associated with this vessel, why is it associated to the planet that it's on? Why? It doesn't need to, right?
Yeah.
It's energy. It's light. It can just transpire, right? So that's the idea of right.
Wow. So that's so profound. So you're saying our psyche is the experience of light. Why did it need a body?
Why does it need?
Like, why does it?
But why is it attached to planet Earth? Why is it? Or our solar system is light. It can multi-dimensional light that we're talking about. So the idea of starseeds is that the light that came is along other light. Don't get me wrong, but some light may be for people who have only known Earth, right? So their experience and how the way they view the Earth is a lot different to someone who's came from a different. Right, and it's not to say someone's then more interesting than another person. It's almost just to say, hey, if this light that we're experiencing, this energy that's within us, there is no defined, once you die, you have to reincarnate as something that's an earthly like being. Right. It can be
doesn't have to be just what you're attached to or something.
Yeah, it's just light. And I'm still trying to, this was a concept that my friend actually told me about, it was like 2-3 months ago, because she was telling me all these different concepts, and I was like, wow, like I never even thought of it like that. But it is having these conversations with more people, that allows me to, because a lot of people would hear this and go, well, that's crazy, like, and I'm like, that's fine, but like me being able to live a life like that is what can bring bring upon a rich life, right? Again, like, what is a rich life? It's all about this happiness, right? What is that? And how do you get there? Does that mean partially being delusional? Maybe, but no. But it's like if that works for the person, then that's all that matters, right? More than anything.
You know, man, I had such a next level question come to my mind, and I haven't experienced this, but I want to know: have you ever, in this life, felt like an unknown being? As if you just look at yourself for a moment and you're like, I don't know what this is. It's an unknown being here in an unknown world. Have you had that kind of vibe, right? Because that became my spirituality, bro. All the freaking stories of soul going out of body and this, I was like, yo, it's unknown. What are we storyifying? It's something unknown is happening. That's the spirituality. All the knowledge makes it normal. Do you understand what I'm saying? The unknown is left to be the only spiritual. Like, if you have an unknown experience, you're going to think it's a spiritual experience.
Exactly. But the only way we can communicate that with others is to define it. Right. But then in that definition, there is that deciding factor whether someone thinks you're crazy or someone that's like, oh no, I get it. I understand what you're saying. And for me, I don't try and convince people. There's no need to convince them. Everyone's on their own path, right? And everyone has their own belief systems. That's why, when someone says, what religion are you? What's your belief? I say like atheist / agnostic, and they kind of roll their eyes like, oh God, here's another one, right? But I'm like, no, like I'm in a position where I can have conversations with so many people. The passion and the, because as much as I'm speaking about the passion of, star seeds and all of this, a Christian would completely disagree with what I'm saying. Right. I will not argue with that person. I'm like, listen, like, who are you trying to convince here? Like, I'm not trying to argue with here. I'm in a position where I can listen to Hindu, I can listen to Muslim, I can listen to a Christian, and everyone would have the same passion. So who am I listening to? Right? Wow. Who am I listening to? And it's not to, and you know this, we could put everyone in the room for a week and they won't come to a conclusion, a month and they won't come to a conclusion. So I'm in a point where I'm not educated enough on any of that to make a predefined decision. All I can do is rely on the feeling I have and know that the choices I've made have been in guidance to a higher power. I don't specify what that higher power is. Right. Somebody asked me that too. They said, do you believe in God? I said, I don't believe language can replace truth, right? Language can be truth, right? Because there was this philosopher, Wittgenstein, he says the limits of my language are the limits of my world. Every human being you see, like matrix screen, the codes on the screen is the language that's moving in their minds, the story they're telling themselves. At some point, universal beings became characters in stories and forgot about it. Oh God! You know what I'm saying? It sounds quite sad when you put it like that. It's really sad. But maybe they intentionally did it because they were so advanced. Who knows? It doesn't have to be like always. We fuck it up. There was actually a short story about that concept of there were children. These children were light beings. They were having a conversation, and they were talking about how it was their duty to go to Earth, almost that light being. They had the choice of going, and they wanted to go to experience that human feeling, because as light beings they don't have all of the privilege that we have of being able to overthink. You might not even be a shape. Like, that's how bizarre I see it, at least. You might not even be a freaking creature, right? You might just be energy, a field of space. I don't know, a field of space, something like a field of space. But so it's almost for them to look at us and want to experience that, while we have no choice.
But let me tell you this. I had this one argument where I was like, if I can look at an ant and the ant has no clue I'm looking at it, how do I know I'm not the ant and something bigger is looking at me? Right? I can't connect. Like, you know, the ant might not realize you're looking at it, but something's looking at the ant. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, in a sense, like I'm trying to say, like, our eyes is like some other being.
But when you think about it as opposed to eyes, because we're looking at eyes as being
sight, yeah,
directly one object or a few objects I can, you know, cast my view upon. But what about all being light that is always connected? Meaning we're one collective consciousness here.
So I feel that my personal opinion is that can't be an individual. You can't know that because there's no individual to know it. See, if I say I'm oneness right now, who the hell is saying that? Do you understand what I'm saying? No individual can tell you I am one. It's an event.
I would say it's an event, exactly, right? And it's happening. We can't.
So does that mean you're saying like some part of our being is not dual? It's just one from the beginning, so it doesn't matter how dual or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
Man,
you're saying that it's singular.
It's almost like it's so strange. It's like the way I've kind of defined it is tying it back into the butterfly effect of almost your consciousness is able to attract and detract certain things in your life, and certain, even like I said, me saying this right now and then potentially someone listening to that and then hearing that, they're like, yeah, okay, cool, like, you know, I've heard that, but what does that, can that alter something?
But let me tell you this, how many people have walked past this
how many people have said the same thing?
No, haven't said anything. Do you understand what I'm saying? How many people see something and they don't say a single thing and they walk past it, and you said it, bro. If you hadn't said that sentence, maybe none of us would have.
It's affected time, right? So time will always be. Time is inevitable, right? But it's things like this. If I was to get a marker, a Sharpie out now and draw on this table like a beautiful pattern and people stop to look at that, I've now altered their timeline and the timelines of the people they're interacting with, and it's like that constant ripple. So it's like what energy.
That's incredible, right? Man. So you're saying being conscious on the level that so many people think they got to do great things to be great, but even the smallest things are
the
like
smallest
wow.
things.
Yeah.
That's why I say, like, when I interact,
I think that's
with
one
people,
of the secrets to success, actually.
It's the empathy, be like not what can you do for me, but what can I do for you, right? Even if you see someone, and don't get me wrong, like I'm not the perfect person where I'm this saint walking around picking up all the trash.
Bro, are you hovering right now?
No, you know what I'm saying? Like, trust me, I got a lot of work to do with myself, 100%. Like, I got to work on myself to make sure I'm able to be the best person for that, right? Because the way I see it is only human interaction. So it's like I'm very conscious of the human interaction. But what I love is when you tie in the butterfly effect in a rich city where there's so many things that happen that can alter people's paths and connect you with, you know, it's like some of the there's so many people I haven't even met in my lifetime yet, right? And they're coming, they're coming, but it's like in order for them to meet me or me meet them, certain events need to happen, but those events may not happen because someone forgot their phone at home, so they got to go run back, and then now that's like
it filters itself automatically. If somebody doesn't deserve to be in a moment, you're right, actually. I'm remembering this in my life randomly. Sometimes the guy gets kicked out for no reason, or like, do you know what I'm saying?
If he felt upset for one day because he wasn't able to handle a certain situation because he wasn't in the right mind state, so
maybe it's not even for him, right? I don't know if you've heard this. Some people would say some things, and even in Christianity, they say don't give pearls to swine, but don't place pearls in front of swine, something like that. And they're saying like don't give deep insight to someone who doesn't understand its value, right? I see. But I think we're so behind. We have to literally release all the secrets.
Yeah, no.
We're so behind schedule. It's like if we share 1,000 secrets, they want to. But let me take this to 2 questions, and then this was incredible so far. So one thing, what is your final view on imagination? I still want to get a sense, like, if somebody asks you what is imagination or how do you experience your imagination, if in a short few sentences, like how would you?
Imagination.
From your view, right?
Imagination. I'm a creative. I'd consider myself a creative person, though. So I'd say imagination for me isn't work. I'd say it's not
Wow.
work.
Yeah.
It's more than work. It's how do you want to live your life? I'd say more than anything. In creating, how do you curate a life for yourself on every level? And that's why I'm saying, like, even with my life, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So I have to get creative in that. I have to imagine that life for myself, right? And then work on myself in little ways in order to mold the version of myself.
Do you know, I'll say this thing. I had this attitude. So for you, it was animation, right? Design. For me, it was a little bit of design, but it was language, words. Suddenly, I would just grab the pen and suddenly all the words were there in my mind and all this, right? But I had this attitude where I was like, okay, I'm going to separate editing and creating process. So I treat it like a cake, right? When I'm baking the cake, I'm not trying to like correct the cake. When I'm expressing something, raw expression, whatever it is, no judgment, nothing. And then a day after, I edit. I go look at it. You know, I'm separating, like, you understand what I'm saying? Cooking it and then the baking part where you put it in the oven and all that. It's just a metaphor.
No, but it's important to separate. It's important to evaluate. It's important to distinguish constantly. Always.
Right. Because if you're doing the creative thing and you try to edit, you block the creative flow. I don't know if you noticed that.
Blockages. The blockages aren't even one way as well. Like,
if you have an expectation, even writer's block, if you have an expectation on what you have to write, I think like suddenly it's...
I think when it comes to work though, it's especially, you know, I've got a very deep love-hate relationship with freelancing. Again, yeah, it pays, but at the same time, creatively, you can't really, there's not a lot of wiggle room, right? Right. But, you know, going back to imagination and the creative process, I'd say more than anything, it's creating life for yourself, I believe, and really curating that. Even with energies, what energies do you want around you? Like, where do you want to spend your time? What are you spending your time on? Constantly evaluating that as well, so you're able to alter. Sorry, the sky looks beautiful right now. It looks so.
So man, let's get to the final question. I'll ask you the final question. This is, I ask everybody. You seem like someone with a deep insight. What message in a bottle will you give the future generations? Imagine you could give them one message. All the children will be born on this earth, right? Like, what message in a bottle would you, in some sense, give to the future generations that are coming?
I'd say it's a good question.
Yeah.
Good question. Spend time finding what makes you happy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't know what makes you happy, explore and find what makes you happy. Because if you don't have that, I don't believe you have a lot, to be honest. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Look at the sky, bro. That was
Bro.